Meteos. After leaving my old company and going freelance, I started thinking about how I might best contribute to the game industry. If I devoted myself to just one title, it would take years of work to finish. And all that would produce was one more video game, not a very effective use of time. With that in mind, I spent a period of time focused on supervising and consulting work. If you're wondering what titles I worked on during this period, I didn't put my name on them, so that's not public information. If I had, it might have looked like I had created those games myself, which would have been unfair to the hardworking teams that worked on them. In the midst of all that, I was approached by Tetsuya Mizuguchi, formerly of Sega, with a request. He wanted to make a falling block puzzle game. It's not clear to me why he specifically asked for something in that genre. And even back then, it was hard to deny that falling block puzzle games were seen as a bit outdated. But I found it to be a fascinating challenge. The genre tends to be more casual, after all. I should start by being completely honest with you. I'm really bad at falling block puzzle games. That's especially true of Puyo Puyo. Staring at that flood of colors really makes my head spin. As a quick aside, they released a game in North America called Kirby's Avalanche, which is a Puyo Puyo game starring Kirby. I supervised that as well. But back on topic. Even though I'm not great at these games, I knew I could come up with a proposal if I just figure out the principles behind their game essence. That's how I'd done it before, after all. And so, Meteos was a game I thought up. Regarding the game essence in falling block puzzle games, the blocks themselves are the risk. The higher they stack, the greater the risk. But if you plan things out really carefully, you'll eventually be able to turn that accumulated risk into a huge reward all at once. That link between risk and reward is arguably easier to see in this genre, given its relative simplicity. Next, I started thinking about whether or not the player really needed to be erasing blocks. Maybe there was some other way to cancel out the risk. There were already plenty of games where you could use a bomb to destroy everything at once. Whether blocks were vaporized or demolished, the wording itself wasn't the issue. I had to change the core concept. The idea I came up with was to make matched blocks blast off and get launched dramatically into the air. I thought this was truly a great concept. You could ignite vertical and horizontal matches, and I could picture tricks like secondary ignitions and air docking, but most of all, it was just absurd enough to make a splash. The proposal I wrote for Meteos used PowerPoint animations to help explain it more easily. And now, here's a glimpse of that very proposal. A mysterious lifeform, the alien. Meteos are raining down on us. The meteors fall like rain and blanket this planet like snow. Use the cursor to swap two vertically stacked meteors. You can also shoot a meteor straight up. Line them up horizontally. Then blast the stacked meteors all the way back into outer space. If the meteors are really heavy and keep falling back, act fast to line up blocks as they ascend. Or shoot a block for a follow-up ignition. In order to launch lots of meteors at once, you need careful preparation. In battles, the blocks you send into outer space get dropped on your opponent's planet as is. Sometimes you'll get hit with a huge block of meteors. But there's opportunity amidst every crisis. Even giant meteors can be blasted away with timely counters. Interplanetary war. Lose and your homeworld is doomed. Fight onward to preserve peace. You can do it. What did you think? Blocks known as Meteos are raining down on your planet, which you launch back and forth in an interplanetary war, and that's Meteos. The game also comes complete with a grand background story. It was pure coincidence that the game ended up targeted for the Nintendo DS. The game was designed to accommodate control with the directional buttons, but we were able to make things feel much snappier using the touchscreen, so the DS was a good fit, I'd say. One rare feature that helps Meteos stand out from other falling block puzzle games is that each planet is unique in terms of elements like playing fields and blocks. In most falling block puzzle games, even if you're able to pick a character, the gameplay stays the same, while only the moves or skills available to you are slightly different. In Meteos, however, every planet is distinct, not just with the aliens or background art, but the block shapes, playing field width, launch characteristics, music, sound effects, and more. On Geolite, gameplay feels generally laid back. You gain more height with each jump on Bogob. Meteos stay suspended for longer on Megadom. Blocks fly straight and at set speeds on Mechs. Vertical ignitions are comparatively strong on Forte. Blocks disappear the second you match them on Heaven Door. Launches eventually max out with repeat ignitions on Gel. Everything moves very slowly on Brabant, and so on. The controls feel drastically different when you switch planets, so I'm sure players had their favorites. Even though it's a puzzle game, there's a fair bit of characterization. Different Meteos types appear at differing rates on each planet, and by collecting those Meteos, you can use them to unlock new planets to play with. Just like how each planet might have their own foods and cultures. There's a natural uniqueness to the gameplay on each as well. There's a special something about the finished game that makes it quite tough to put down. I think it's a lot of fun. Still, I have some regrets. Issues with the processing load meant we couldn't reach the game balance I envisioned, and the game released with a fair number of bugs. So there's plenty I wish could have been better. I personally tuned the balance for each individual planet, but we changed processing speeds late in dev, resulting in a game that was more difficult than I intended. If the game were released nowadays, I bet it would be a hit in the smartphone market. Now, after the original release of Meteos, there was an Xbox Live version, a Disney version, a version for flip phones, a pretty wide variety of titles that hit the market. However, I wasn't involved in any of them. I learned that they were coming out the same way everyone else did, by seeing the news in places like gaming magazines. I was kept completely in the dark. That was a shame, too. Still, considering how limiting the rules tend to be in most falling block puzzle games, I think it's fair to say that Meteos had a certain sparkle all its own. The project might have been relatively small, but I'd say it was well worth the time spent. Now then, next up in the Games Concepts category, I'll discuss a game many of you, especially overseas, may not know of. One called Sodate, Kochu Oja Mushikin. Stage clear.